Captain Elizabeth Morgan stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, staring at the view screen with a mixture of wonder and dread. What had begun as a routine mission to the Kepler 438 system had turned into humanity's first contact with alien life. And it wasn't going well. "They're hailing us again, Captain," said Communications Officer Lisa Green, her voice tight with tension. Elizabeth took a deep breath. "Put them through." The screen flickered, revealing a tall, humanoid figure with skin that seemed to glow from within. Its features were almost human, but too perfect, too symmetrical. It looked down at Elizabeth with cold eyes that shimmered like opals. "Your delay in responding is disappointing," the being said. Its voice was melodious yet emotionless. "The divine ascendant grows impatient." "This is Captain Elizabeth Morgan of the United Earth ship Defiant," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "We need time to consult with our government. First contact protocols require—" "Your protocols are irrelevant," the being interrupted. "You will present yourself to the divine ascendant within 1 Earth hour. Further delay will be considered hostile action." The screen went dark before Elizabeth could respond. "Options?" she asked, looking around at her senior officers. Jack Hayes, her tactical officer, spoke up first. "Their ships outclass us in every way, Captain. Sensors show weapon systems we can't even identify. If they decide to attack—" He didn't need to finish the sentence. "What do we know about them?" Elizabeth asked. Science Officer Kimberly Ward consulted her display. "They call themselves the Celestials. Their ships appear to be made of some crystalline material that our scanners can't fully analyze. Energy readings are off the charts. They've positioned 5 vessels around us in a containment pattern." Elizabeth walked to the viewport and looked out at the massive alien vessel that dwarfed the Defiant. Its surface gleamed like polished diamond, catching the light of the nearby star and fracturing it into rainbows. "I don't like being bullied," she said quietly. "But I like the idea of starting an interstellar war even less." She turned back to her crew. "I'll meet with this divine ascendant. Commander Hayes, you'll accompany me. Dr. Ward, continue analyzing their technology. If this goes badly, Earth needs to know what we're facing." 2 hours later, Elizabeth and Jack stood in a vast chamber aboard the main celestial vessel. Walls pulsed with soft light, and the air smelled faintly of ozone. 7 tall celestials stood in a semicircle, their white robes flowing despite the absence of any breeze. The central figure stepped forward. Unlike the others, this celestial wore a headpiece that curved upward like a crown of crystal thorns. "I am the divine ascendant," it said, its voice echoing unnaturally in the chamber. "You stand in the presence of those who seeded life throughout this galaxy. We are your creators, your gods." Elizabeth kept her expression neutral, though her heart raced. "We come in peace, seeking mutual understanding, and—" "You misunderstand," the divine ascendant cut in. "This is not a negotiation or an exchange between equals. This is a homecoming, the children returning to their makers." It spread its arms wide. "We have watched humanity grow from primitive creatures to beings nearly worthy of serving us." Jack tensed beside her, but Elizabeth placed a subtle hand on his arm. "Serving you?" she asked carefully. "All life was created to serve the Celestial Imperium," the divine ascendant explained, as if speaking to a child. "Countless worlds across the stars fulfill their purpose by providing resources, worship, and genetic material to those who made them." It stepped closer, towering over Elizabeth. "Your world has now reached the developmental stage where you can be of use." "And if we choose our own path?" Elizabeth asked. The chamber darkened momentarily, the pulsing lights turning red. "Choice is an illusion we permitted during your development," the divine ascendant said coldly. "That time has passed. Return to your vessel. Inform your leaders. Within 7 planetary rotations, we will establish our first temple embassy on your world. Resistance will result in cleansing." 1 week later, Elizabeth watched from the bridge as the first celestial ships entered Earth orbit. Despite her warnings, the United Earth government had decided to welcome the aliens peacefully. Politicians spoke of technological exchange, cultural enrichment, and humanity's exciting new chapter. "They're fools," Jack said, standing beside her. "These aren't friendly visitors or even conquerors. They think they're gods." On the view screen, a celestial vessel hovered over New York City, a beam of light extending from its underside to Central Park. "The president is welcoming them personally," Lisa reported from her station. "Live broadcast to every corner of Earth." "Record everything," Elizabeth ordered. "Every interaction, every word they say. If they're lying about creating us, they're probably lying about everything else." Across Earth, massive crystalline structures began to rise in major cities. The Celestials called them temples, but they served as much more than places of worship. Citizens were invited inside for enlightenment. Many returned changed, devoted to the Celestials, while others never returned at all. Military leaders who questioned the aliens' intentions found themselves suddenly retired. Scientists who studied celestial technology too closely disappeared. Gradually, Earth's resistance crumbled under the overwhelming technological superiority of their visitors. Elizabeth and her crew watched helplessly as humanity bowed to its new gods. "Captain, we have new orders," Lisa said 3 months after first contact. "We're to escort a celestial vessel to the Mars colony." Elizabeth exchanged glances with Jack. They had been expecting this. The Defiant was one of the few Earth ships that had direct contact with the Celestials and survived. "Acknowledged," Elizabeth said. Then, using a code they had developed, she added, "Prepare for Standard Escort Protocol 7. Jack nodded slightly. Protocol 7 wasn't standard at all. It was their signal to prepare for desertion. That night, while docked at the lunar base for resupply, Elizabeth gathered her most trusted officers in her quarters. "I won't order any of you to join me," she said quietly. "What I'm proposing is mutiny by any legal definition. But I believe Earth is under occupation by a hostile force that plans to enslave humanity." "I'm with you, Captain," Jack said immediately. One. By one, the others agreed. By morning, 60% of the crew had pledged to follow Elizabeth. The rest were given the option to disembark at the lunar base. As the Defiant broke orbit, supposedly to meet the celestial vessel, Elizabeth looked at her loyal crew. "Set course for the asteroid belt," she ordered. "We'll find others who see the truth. This isn't over." On Earth below, more crystalline temples rose, gleaming in the sunlight like beautiful cancers spreading across the face of a dying world. The resistance had begun. 3 years passed since the USS Defiant vanished from Earth's tracking systems. The Celestials had declared Captain Elizabeth Morgan and her crew traitors to humanity. Their faces appeared on wanted notices in every city, beneath the shadow of towering crystal temples. Dr. Olivia Wright wiped sweat from her forehead as she peered into a microscope. The laboratory hidden beneath the Appalachian Mountains was cold, but her work made her sweat anyway. Fear did that to a person. "Any progress?" asked Alan Rogers, a former Marine who now led security for the hidden facility. Olivia straightened her back and nodded. "Look at this." Alan bent down to look through the microscope. He saw a small shard of crystal, taken from a damaged piece of celestial technology. As he watched, Olivia adjusted a dial on a nearby machine. The crystal flickered and went dark. "What did you do?" Alan asked. "I disrupted its energy field," Olivia said with a small smile. "All celestial technology operates on a specific subspace frequency. We've been trying to block it for months, but I finally found the right modulation." Alan looked at her with new respect. "You mean we can shut down their weapons? Their ships?" "Theoretically, yes," Olivia said. "But we need to test it on something bigger than a shard. And we need a delivery system. Something that can project this disruption field at a distance." Alan nodded. "I'll get word to Admiral Daniels." Far from Earth, hidden in the darkness of the asteroid belt, Admiral Frank Daniels stood in a makeshift control room carved into the heart of a large asteroid. Around him, engineers and technicians worked on various components of what would become humanity's most advanced warship. A communications officer approached him. "Admiral, we have a coded message from Eagle Nest." Eagle Nest was the code name for Olivia's research facility. Daniels read the message and allowed himself a small smile, the first in months. "Get me Captain Morgan," he ordered. Elizabeth Morgan had aged more than 3 years since fleeing Earth. Deep lines marked her face and gray streaked her once dark hair. She stared at the asteroid facility through the viewport of her ship, now renamed Resistance after they'd stripped away all identifying markers of the former USS Defiant. Jack Hayes, now her second-in-command, stood beside her. "Hard to believe. They built all this in secret," he said. Elizabeth nodded. "Humanity is resourceful, especially when backed into a corner." When they docked, Admiral Daniels greeted them personally. "Captain Morgan, Commander Hayes, welcome to Project Thunderbolt." He led them through tunnels carved into the asteroid, past workshops where engineers assembled components for a ship unlike any Elizabeth had seen before. "We're building it in sections," Daniels explained. "Too dangerous to construct it all in one place. When each module is ready, we transport it here for final assembly." They entered a large chamber where a partial hull took shape. Its design was sleek and predatory, nothing like the exploration vessels Elizabeth was used to commanding. "We're calling it the USS Vindicator," Daniels said, "and thanks to Dr. Wright's breakthrough, it might actually stand a chance against celestial ships." "What breakthrough?" Jack asked. Daniels explained Olivia's discovery about the subspace frequency that powered celestial technology. "We're building weapons that can disrupt that frequency. If it works, we can shut down their ships, their weapons, maybe even those damn temples." Elizabeth studied the partially built ship. "When will it be ready?" 6 months, if we're lucky," Daniels replied. "But we need someone to lead the weapons integration team, someone who understands both the science and the tactical applications." "I have just the person," Elizabeth said. "Lieutenant Susan Miller served as my systems engineer. She lost her family to the Celestials' Enlightenment program. She's brilliant and motivated. Back on Earth, the Resistance operated in shadows. Alan Rogers moved through a crowded street in what used to be Chicago. Above him, a celestial temple gleamed in the morning sun, its crystalline spires reaching toward the sky like grasping fingers. He entered a coffee shop and sat at a table where a woman was reading a book. Without looking up, she spoke quietly. "They're taking more people. Not just for enlightenment anymore, they're harvesting something from us." Alan kept his expression neutral. "Evidence? My sister works as a cleaner in the Washington Temple. She saw holding cells. Hundreds of people in some kind of stasis. They had tubes connected to their bodies, drawing blood or something else." Alan felt sick but maintained his calm facade. "Get me pictures or video if possible. No unnecessary risks." The woman nodded slightly and left, leaving her book behind. Alan waited 5 minutes before taking the book and leaving. In orbit around Jupiter, Lieutenant Susan Miller worked with a team of engineers to integrate Dr. Wright's disruption technology into the Vindicator's weapons systems. The ship was nearly complete, its hull assembled from modules transported secretly from Earth and Mars. "The main problem is range," Susan explained to Captain Morgan during a briefing. "Dr. Wright's disruptor works perfectly in lab conditions, but projecting that field far enough to affect a celestial ship before they can fire on us is challenging." Elizabeth studied the schematics. "Keep working on it, this is our only advantage." Admiral Daniels entered the briefing room, his face grim. "We have a problem. One of our supply ships was intercepted near Saturn. The Celestials may suspect something's happening out here." The room fell silent. They weren't ready for a confrontation yet. "How much do they know?" Elizabeth asked. "Unclear," Daniels replied. "But we need to accelerate our timeline. Captain Morgan, I'm giving you command of the Vindicator. Even half-armed, it's the best hope we have." Elizabeth looked around at the faces of her officers, people who had sacrificed everything to resist the false gods who claimed to own humanity. "Have Dr. Wright transferred here immediately," she ordered. "If we need to modify the weapons on the fly, we'll need her expertise." Jack Hayes studied a tactical display, showing celestial ship movements in the outer solar system. They're sending a patrol vessel this way. Estimated arrival, 36 hours. Elizabeth straightened her uniform jacket. Then we have 36 hours to make this ship battle-ready. Let's get to work. As the crew scrambled to prepare the Vindicator for its unexpected first mission, Elizabeth stood alone on the bridge looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Celestials' patrol ship approached, unaware it was about to face humanity's refusal to worship false gods. The real test of Dr. Wright's breakthrough was coming sooner than anyone had planned. Captain Elizabeth Morgan sat in the command chair of the USS Vindicator as the crew worked frantically around her. The ship hummed with energy as systems came online one by one. They had less than 2 hours before the Celestial patrol vessel would be in sensor range. Weapon status? Elizabeth asked, her voice steady despite the tension. Susan Miller looked up from her console. Main disruptor is at 60% capacity. We've had to bypass some safety protocols, but it should work. Secondary weapons are online but untested, Dr. Olivia Wright stood nearby, dark circles under her eyes after working for 30 hours straight. The targeting system is the weak point. We need to hit them precisely where their power core connects to their main systems. Jack Hayes nodded from the tactical station. I've programmed the attack pattern based on the celestial ship designs we've observed. If their patrol vessels follow the same basic layout as their larger ships, we have a chance. Elizabeth studied the tactical display. The celestial ship was moving through the rings of Saturn, following the path of the human supply vessel they had intercepted days earlier. They're searching for us, she said quietly. They know something is happening out here, but they don't. Know what? Admiral Daniels entered the bridge. Engineering reports the engines are at full capacity. We can outrun them if we have to. Elizabeth shook her head. Running isn't an option anymore. If we don't stand and fight now, they'll bring reinforcements. Our window of surprise will be gone. She stood and addressed the bridge crew. I know this isn't how we plan to test the Vindicator. I know we're not fully ready. But sometimes history doesn't wait for perfect moments. The Celestials believe they are gods. Today, we show them they're not. The crew straightened at their stations, determination replacing fear in their eyes. Take us out, Elizabeth ordered. Set course to intercept the patrol vessel near the outer rings. The ice particles might help mask our approach. The Vindicator moved silently away from its hiding place in the asteroid base. Its dark hull was designed to absorb rather than reflect light, making it nearly invisible against the blackness of space. Only the faint blue glow of its engines betrayed its position. They haven't detected us yet, Jack reported as they approached Saturn's rings. Their sensors are focused on the debris field where they found our supply ship. Elizabeth nodded. Hold position here. Let them come to us. Minutes passed in tense silence. On the main screen, the celestial ship grew larger, a gleaming crystalline structure that seemed to capture and amplify the distant sunlight. Beautiful and deadly. They've changed course, Jack said suddenly. They're heading directly for us. They've spotted us. Battle stations, Elizabeth ordered calmly. Charge main disruptor. Susan's hands flew over her console. Disruptor charging. 65%. 70%. They're hailing us, Communications Officer Lisa Green reported. Put them through, Elizabeth said, standing to face the screen. The face of a celestial appeared, its perfect features arranged in an expression of mild curiosity. Unknown vessel, it said, its melodious voice filling the bridge. You are operating. In restricted space, identify yourself immediately. Elizabeth stepped forward. This is Captain Elizabeth Morgan of the USS Vindicator. We claim the right to travel freely through our own solar system. The Celestial's expression didn't change, but its eyes hardened. The traitor Morgan. Divine Ascendant will be pleased. When we bring her your ship and crew, its voice turned cold. Surrender now and your deaths will be painless. Elizabeth smiled without humor. We're not surrendering, and we're not dying today. She cut the transmission with a gesture and turned to Jack. Distance to target? 50,000 kilometers and closing, he replied. They're powering weapons. Susan, status of the disruptor? "85% charged, Captain. It's the best we'll get without another hour of charging." Elizabeth took a deep breath. "Target their power core junction and fire when ready." The celestial ship fired first. A beam of golden energy lanced out from its bow, missing the Vindicator by mere meters as Elizabeth ordered evasive maneuvers. "They're faster than we calculated," Jack said, his hands dancing across the tactical controls, adjusting targeting parameters. The Vindicator shuddered as a second beam grazed its port side. "Minor damage to outer hull," Susan reported. "Shields holding at 90%. Elizabeth gripped the arms of her chair. "Return fire." The main disruptor fired, a pulse of blue-white energy that looked deceptively gentle as it raced toward the celestial vessel. It struck the crystalline hull directly where Jack had targeted. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the glow of the celestial ship flickered, its weapons powered down, and the lights along its hull dimmed. "Direct hit," Jack shouted. "Their main power systems are fluctuating." Dr. Wright leaned forward, staring at the readings from her console. "The disruption field is working. It's cascading through their systems faster than I predicted." The celestial ship drifted, its engines sputtering, as it tried to restore power. Then, without warning, its weapons came back online. A desperate shot struck the Vindicator's starboard side. The ship rocked violently. Sparks flew from a console, and a crew member was thrown to the floor. "Damage report," Elizabeth called out. "Starboard shields down. Hull breach on deck 4, Susan responded, her voice tight. "Emergency containment holding." Elizabeth turned to Dr. Wright. "Why are they back online?" "Their systems are adapting," Olivia said, her fingers flying over her console. "We need to hit them again with a modified frequency." "How long?" Elizabeth asked. 2 minutes to recalibrate." "We don't have 2 minutes," Jack warned as the celestial ship prepared to fire again. Elizabeth made a split-second decision. "Divert all power to engines. Full speed, collision course." The crew looked at her in shock, but followed orders. The Vindicator surged forward, racing toward the damaged celestial vessel. "Fire all conventional weapons," Elizabeth ordered. "Give Dr. Wright the time she needs." A barrage of missiles struck the celestial ship, causing minimal damage, but forcing it to focus on defense rather than attack. "Disruptor recalibrated," Olivia announced. "New frequency loaded." "Fire," Elizabeth commanded. The second disruptor blast struck the celestial ship at point-blank range. This time, the effect was immediate and devastating. The crystalline hull, cracked dark lines spreading across its surface like a spiderweb. The glow within dimmed and died. Secondary explosions rippled along its length. "Break off," Elizabeth ordered. "Get us clear." The Vindicator veered away as the celestial patrol ship broke apart, fragments of crystal scattering across the blackness of space. Silence fell on the bridge as the crew stared at the destruction on the main screen. "We did it," Jack said softly. "We actually did it." Elizabeth didn't smile. This was one patrol ship. A small victory. She turned to face her crew. "But the first of many. We've proven the gods can bleed." She looked back at the drifting remains of the celestial vessel. And now they know it too. The Divine Ascendant stood in the central chamber of the Earth flagship temple, watching a replay of the patrol ship's destruction. The crystalline walls around her pulsed with angry red light, reflecting her mood. "Unacceptable," she said, her voice echoing in the vast space. 4 lesser celestials bowed before her, their perfect faces showing an unusual emotion: fear. "The humans have created a weapon that disrupts our technology," one reported. "We have analyzed the attack. They targeted the power junction with precise knowledge of our systems." The Divine Ascendant's eyes narrowed. "They could not have developed such knowledge on their own. Someone has helped them." She turned her cold gaze to each celestial in turn. "Find the traitor among us." As the celestials departed to follow her orders, the Divine Ascendant touched a control on her wrist. The chamber darkened and a shimmering portal opened. She knelt before it. "Masters," she whispered, "we have complications." Meanwhile, aboard the damaged but triumphant USS Vindicator, Captain Elizabeth Morgan and her crew were not celebrating their victory. They were preparing for the inevitable response. "They've destroyed Beijing," Jack Hayes reported grimly, reading the encrypted message from Earth's resistance. 3 million people gone in an instant. The bridge fell silent. Elizabeth closed her eyes briefly, absorbing the news. "They're demanding we surrender," Jack continued. "The Divine Ascendant has given Earth's governments 48 hours to hand us over or they'll destroy another major city." "They're afraid," Dr. Olivia Wright said. "We wouldn't prompt such a reaction if we hadn't truly hurt them." Elizabeth nodded slowly. "Admiral Daniels, what's the status of our other ships?" The Admiral studied his tablet. "We have 3 more vessels nearly complete. None as powerful as the Vindicator, but they're armed with your disruptor technology." "And the resistance on Earth?" "Activated and ready. They're targeting celestial outposts across the planet." Elizabeth turned to Dr. Wright. "We need to understand more about their technology. Dr. Wright, did we recover any intact pieces from the destroyed patrol ship?" "Yes," Olivia replied. "A team is analyzing them now. I was about to join them." "I'm coming with you," Elizabeth said. "Jack, you have the bridge. Prepare a battle plan for the Jupiter Citadel. If we're going to strike again, we need to hit them where it hurts." In the makeshift laboratory, Olivia and her team had assembled the largest intact fragment from the celestial ship. It was a piece of the control system, its crystalline surface still faintly glowing despite the damage. "It's still active," Olivia explained as Elizabeth entered. "Drawing power from somewhere, but we don't know how." Elizabeth studied the piece. "Can you access any information from it?" "We've been trying. The data structure is unlike anything we've seen before." Dr. Gregory Wells, a computer specialist, looked up from his workstation. "I've been trying various decryption methods, but it's not just encrypted. It's fundamentally different from human computer systems." Elizabeth frowned. "Different how?" "It's more organic," Gregory explained. "Almost like it's thinking rather than computing." As if responding to his words, the crystal fragment pulsed brighter. Symbols appeared on its surface, strange, flowing characters that changed and shifted. "It's activating," Olivia exclaimed, reaching for her equipment. Gregory stared at his screen in amazement. "It's connecting to something. I'm getting data downloads." For several minutes, the humans watched as the crystal transmitted information to Gregory's system. Then, as suddenly as it had started, it went dark. "What did we get?" Elizabeth asked. Gregory's face had gone pale as he scrolled through the downloaded files. "Everything," he whispered. "Their entire database, ship designs, biological data, mission parameters, and the truth about who they really are." Hours later, Elizabeth gathered her senior officers in the conference room. Gregory Wells stood at the front, ready to present his findings. "The Celestials have been lying about everything," he began. "They're not gods, and they didn't create life in the galaxy. They're servants, biological tools created by another species entirely." He displayed an image on the main screen, a wispy, luminous entity that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. "These are their masters," Gregory continued, "beings of pure energy that exist primarily in higher dimensions. They created the Celestials to interact with the physical world, to harvest resources and, more importantly, genetic material from conquered worlds." Elizabeth leaned forward. "Genetic material for what purpose?" "The masters are dying," Gregory explained. "They need fresh genetic code to regenerate their own deteriorating structure. They've been harvesting genetic material from species across the galaxy for millennia." Jack Hayes frowned. "Then why target Earth specifically? We're hardly the only planet with life." Gregory pulled up another display. "Because of this." He showed a strand of human DNA with certain sections highlighted. Human DNA contains unique sequences that the masters believe could help them achieve permanent stability. We weren't randomly discovered. We were specifically targeted. The room fell, silent as the implications sank in. "The Enlightenment Program," Susan Miller said quietly. "It's not spiritual at all. They're extracting genetic material from humans." "Yes," Gregory confirmed. and the temples are processing centers. Elizabeth stood and paced the room. This changes everything. We're not just fighting for our freedom anymore. We're fighting for our very existence as a species. Admiral Daniels nodded grimly. And we need to tell Earth's governments the truth. It might help them find the courage to resist. Elizabeth turned to look at her officers. We need a new plan. The Jupiter Citadel isn't just a military target. It's their primary processing center for this solar system. If we can destroy it, we might buy Earth time to organize a proper defense. The attack won't be easy, Jack warned. After our success, against the patrol ship they'll be expecting us. We don't have a choice, Elizabeth replied. Dr. Wright, can the disruptor technology be modified to affect their entire citadel? Olivia thought for a moment. Possibly. The Citadel operates on the same basic principles as their ships. But we'd need to get much closer than we did with the patrol vessel. Elizabeth nodded decisively. Then that's what we'll do. Begin preparations immediately. As the meeting ended, Chief Medical Officer Paul Martinez approached Elizabeth. Captain, there's something else you should know. I've been treating the crew injured in our battle, and I've found something strange in Lieutenant Miller's blood work. Elizabeth frowned. What is it? It appears she was subjected to celestial experimentation at some point. There are markers in her DNA that match the patterns Dr. Wells just showed us. She may have information in her cellular structure that could help us understand what they're really doing to humans. Elizabeth looked across the room at Susan, who was deep in conversation with Dr. Wright about weapons modifications. Does she know? Elizabeth asked quietly. Not yet, Paul replied. I wanted to tell you first, Elizabeth sighed. Tell her. She deserves to know what they did to her family and to her. The massive celestial citadel orbiting Jupiter gleamed against the backdrop of the gas giant's swirling clouds. Its crystalline spires reached outward like the fingers of a giant hand, ready to grasp anything that came near. Around it, a dozen celestial ships maintained a defensive formation, their weapons primed. Captain Elizabeth Morgan studied the tactical display on the Vindicator's bridge. The odds were not in their favor. They're expecting us, Jack Hayes said quietly. Elizabeth nodded. But they don't know about our allies. As if on cue, 3 smaller ships emerged from hiding positions around Jupiter's moons. They were Earth vessels, converted in secret to carry the same disruptor technology as the Vindicator. All ships reporting. Ready, Captain, Lisa Green announced from communications. And on Earth? Elizabeth asked. Resistance cells are in position at every major temple. They're waiting for our signal. Elizabeth took a deep breath. The plan was risky, perhaps even desperate. But after the revelation about the Celestials' true nature, they had no choice but to act. Lieutenant Miller, status of the main disruptor? She asked. Susan looked up from her console. Her face was pale but determined. Learning about the celestial experiments on her had only strengthened her resolve. Modified, as Dr. Wright suggested, she reported. If we can get close enough to the Citadel's main transmission node, we can broadcast a disruption signal that will affect not just the Citadel, but potentially all celestial technology in the solar system. Elizabeth nodded. Then, that's our target. She opened a channel to the other ships. This is Captain Morgan. You all know what's at stake today. The Celestials claim to be gods, but we've learned they're slaves to beings from another dimension. They've been harvesting humans for genetic material. Today we free ourselves, and perhaps them as well. She closed the channel and turned to her bridge crew. Battle stations, full speed ahead. The human ships accelerated toward the Citadel. The celestial vessels moved to intercept them, golden energy beams lancing out across space. Evasive maneuvers, Elizabeth ordered calmly. Hold disruptor fire until we're closer to the Citadel. The Vindicator rolled and dove, avoiding the worst of the celestial fire. One of the smaller human ships wasn't as fortunate. A direct hit shattered its port side, sending it spinning away. Adams is hit, Jack reported. They've lost engines, but life support is intact. Tell Cooper and Bennett to continue with the plan, Elizabeth said, referring to the captains of the remaining ships. We need to punch through their line. The battle intensified as the human ships drove toward the Citadel. The Vindicator shuddered as energy beams struck its shields. Shields at 60%, Susan reported. Return fire, Elizabeth ordered. Conventional weapons only. Save the disruptor. The Vindicator's missiles streaked toward the nearest celestial ship. They detonated against its hull, causing minimal damage but forcing it to adjust its position. We need a clearer path to the Citadel, Elizabeth said. Jack, target the ship at coordinates 37 Mark II, full missile spread. The Vindicator fired again. This time the concentrated barrage found a weak point in the celestial ship's structure. It didn't destroy it but created enough damage for the human ships to slip past. We're through their line, Jack announced, approaching the Citadel. On the main screen, the enormous structure loomed larger. Elizabeth could now see details in its crystal surface, pulsing light patterns that seemed almost alive. Scan for the transmission node, she ordered. Dr. Wright said it would be near the base of the central spire. Susan worked her console. Got it. Sending coordinates to targeting. Suddenly the ship rocked violently. Warning sirens blared. Direct hit, Susan shouted. Starboard engines damaged. Shields failing. Elizabeth gripped her chair. Distance to target? 100,000 kilometers, Jack replied. Too far for an effective disruptor strike. Elizabeth made a quick decision. Divert all power to the engines and disruptor. Forget the shields. Captain, Jack began to protest. Do it, she ordered firmly. We won't get another chance. The Vindicator surged forward, taking more hits as it approached the Citadel. Systems failed across the ship. A console exploded, injuring a crew member. 50,000 kilometers, Jack counted down. 40,000. Prepare to fire the disruptor, Elizabeth commanded. Maximum yield. Susan's hands flew over her console. Disruptor charged and ready, targeting the transmission node. 30,000 kilometers, Jack continued. 20,000. The Citadel began to fire directly at them. Massive energy beams that the Vindicator without shields could not withstand for long. Hull breach on deck 3, someone shouted. 10,000 kilometers, Jack said. In optimal disruptor range. Fire, Elizabeth ordered. The disruptor fired, a blinding pulse of blue-white energy that struck the base of the Citadel's central spire. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the pulsing lights within the crystalline structure flickered. It's working, Susan exclaimed. The disruption is spreading through their systems. On the screen, they watched as the disruption effect rippled outward from the impact point, moving through the Citadel like a wave. The celestial ships, Jack reported. They're losing power too. Elizabeth allowed herself a small smile. Broadcast, the disruption frequency to Earth. Tell the resistance it's time. As Lisa sent the signal, the Citadel's lights dimmed further. Then, unexpectedly, a new light appeared. A portal opening in the central chamber of the Citadel, visible through its transparent walls. What is that? Elizabeth asked, leaning forward. Dr. Wright, who had joined them on the bridge, paled. It's them, the Masters. Through the portal, wispy, luminous forms began to appear, the higher dimensional beings that had created and enslaved the Celestials. They're trying to intervene directly, Dr. Wright said. Our disruption must have severed their control over the Celestials. Can they harm us? Elizabeth asked. I don't know, they exist primarily in higher dimensions. Their ability to interact with our reality is limited. As they watched, something unexpected happened. A celestial figure approached. The portal, the divine ascendant herself. She raised her hands toward the luminous beings, but not in worship. The gesture was one of defiance. She's fighting them, Elizabeth said in wonder. The divine ascendant turned toward the human ship. Her voice came through their communication, system strained but clear. Humans, she said. Your weapon has freed us from direct control. We see the truth now. For millennia we have been slaves, believing ourselves to be gods. She paused. We can extend your disruption signal across the galaxy, freeing all our kind. Will you help us? Elizabeth exchanged looks with her officers. How do we know this? Isn't a trick? Jack asked suspiciously. We don't, Elizabeth admitted. But if there's a chance to end this conflict without more bloodshed, we should take it. She opened a channel to the Divine Ascendant. We'll help you. Send us the codes we need. Within hours, the Celestial Citadel had become the center of an unexpected alliance. The disruption signal, amplified by celestial technology, spread throughout the solar system. On Earth, Celestials in temples across the planet suddenly stopped their harvesting operations, many turning against the facilities they had once maintained. Elizabeth stood on the bridge of the Vindicator, watching as repair teams worked to fix the battle damage. Jack Hayes approached her. Reports from Earth, he said. The Celestials are surrendering everywhere. Some are actually helping free humans from the temples. Elizabeth nodded. And the Masters? No sign of them. The Divine Ascendant believes. They've retreated to their dimension, at least for now. Elizabeth looked out at the stars. So it's over? This battle is, Jack replied. But there's an entire galaxy out there with Celestials still enslaved to the Masters. And eventually the Masters will try again. Elizabeth straightened her uniform. Then we have work to do. She turned to face her crew. The Celestials claimed to be gods. We showed them they weren't. But in doing so, we discovered something more important. True freedom is never given. It must be taken, whether you're human or celestial. She looked back at the stars, countless points of light where other beings might be suffering under the yoke of false gods, and we're going to take it back, world by world,